I've seen ranchers withstand family fights. I've seen them withstand low prices. I've seen them withstand litigation, all sorts of things. Drought is the one thing that will take a very tough rancher down. So somebody always says, "Oh, it's liquid gold." I'm like, I don't need liquid gold. I need water. So it's more.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy advisor and investor doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And welcome to the final episode of our Colorado River Basin special. We are thrilled to be joined by Jerry Gunderson, who is a businessman and also fourth generation cattle rancher coming to us from Colorado. Jerry, great to see you. And thanks for joining us and finishing off this mini season with a bang. Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
So Jerry, when we were sort of doing an introduction, you mentioned you literally have the kind of the dirt under your nails. You've got a great experience in publishing, running companies, but also as a cattleman or rancher. So give us a bit of sort of color, if you like, just on the ranch that you own, operate, and the sort of the family history as well.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, that my great-great-grandfather came over from Norway and settled the ranch, part of it. He had his eyes blown out in a mine accident, so he was blind. So the real hero is probably my great-great-grandmother, but he, the part of the ranch that is still in the family name today, he dug the irrigation ditches by feeling along with his hands how the water fell. And we still use some of those ditches today.
Wow.
The ranch is, we run about a couple hundred head of cattle. The areas that I run on are pretty vast because of water. So in Missouri, I could run my herd on a couple of hundred acres, and I've all told in close to 40,000 acres with government grazing permits. So water is extremely high priority for ranchers, both for cattle, maintenance of the cattle health, and also grazing, irrigating pastures and hay crops and things of that nature.
Jerry, where's the ranch located in Colorado?
Well, it's the desert grazing permit that is a wintertime pastures on the Colorado-Utah border, and 80 miles to the east, up to 10,000 feet in elevation in the mountains for the summer pasture. So it's not a contiguous ranch. It's a collection of various properties which we manage and move the cattle to and from based on the conditions of the season.
Interesting. Is that typical? I mean, do other ranchers in the state and region do that?
Once you go west of the Colorado, I would say west of the Rocky Continental Divide, typical doesn't come out talked very often. So there are ranches there's a ranch. Everything is different, and so for example, a good. If I go a week and I haven't said, wow, I haven't done this before, I'm pretty shocked. So it's every ranch is a little different. Every ranch has various assets at its disposal to try to raise. On one end, you have Ralph Lauren's ranch down in Ridgeway, where he runs 1,000 head on 17,000 acres, and it's beautiful, right? It's spectacular. On the other hand, you have a family here, a very successful ranching family, the Van Winkles, who run 500 head of beautiful Charolais cattle, and they don't own any land. They lease it all. And they lease part of it from the city water district, I think. But they're very successful. They're very good ranchers. So it's all over the board. In my history with cattle associations and beef magazines, I would tell you an oddity of the U.S. cattle business is that When I got started, the average herd size in the cattle industry was 35 head. That was the average. It's grown to 40 head, which means that people of very, very aggressive agricultural commodity groups have tried to come in and consolidate the cattle industry, and they've all ended up with black eyes and bloody noses because it's just not a business you can say, okay, I go from 100 to 1,000 and blah blah blah. Well,
Right.
while that's nice in theory, it doesn't really vote. So you have a lot of small ranchers, a lot of medium-sized ranchers, and a few big ranchers, and they all manage their operations a bit differently, and they all have different water. I have an industrial grade water truck for drought purposes, and that's not very common in the area. So
Well, so talk us through that, Jerry.
Interesting.
What do you mean in industrial grade? So that means in the event of supplies running dry, or
yes,
what does that actually mean? That's your backup emergency water fund, essentially.
it is. I don't like to see the engine come on that truck very often, but I'm glad. I bought it from a oil and gas company used. They use a great amount of water when they're drilling for natural gas. So they have these huge
Right.
water trucks. And if we think it's a dry year and the stock ponds are zero or maybe just filled a little bit, we'll start running that truck probably in about a month. We'll start running that truck to supplement the ponds, and then we'll use tanks in addition to that. But that truck on a dry year, that truck's running all day, every day throughout the winter grazing season. Summertime, we have enough free flowing streams that in spring and fall and summer that we're in pretty good shape. And if some of those streams go dry, we're beyond DEFCON 5 at that point.
Right.
So
Right.
we're in pretty good shape that way.
And Jerry, what have you seen, over the past several decades, with respect to water in Colorado and the American West? We talked briefly about, the drought, mega drought, aridification, but from, boots on the ground, you're a rancher, you're running a business. What does the curve look like?
Well, in a nutshell, we've just got a shrinking river, and that's drought. It's a whole lot more vegetation in this area than used to be. There are a lot more trees. I mean, that we fight that, hey, we don't have enough trees. We have way too many trees in the American West sucking the water out. I'll never forget one time I was up in the high country, and a week before I rode across a dry stream bed, and the freeze came, and all kinds of willows and invasive species are on this stream. A freeze came, and the next week I rode across it. It was full. The trees and vegetation had stopped drinking, so the water comes up dramatically. So we have a lot more vegetation. We have a lot more people. We have a lot more golf courses. There's some agricultural plays probably in Arizona that we didn't have before. So we have a lot more demand on a shrinking supply. And so over the last 30 years, and we, coulda, woulda, shoulda 30 years ago, but we're not even doing it now. We probably need to be having water discussions with all the stakeholders. And I know it was interesting, the Walton Foundation, there was an invasive species on the river, and the Walton Foundation did a grant to get rid of that species, and it was somewhat successful in raising the water amount in the river. An environmental group, I'm sure well-meaning, found some species had adapted to that invasive species plant and got it stopped. So we have to sit with all the stakeholders, the environmental groups, the developers, the real estate, the ranchers, and discuss how we can use less. So we've got to use less, or we're going to have some fairly challenging situations for sure.
So, shrinking river, over allocated, poor infrastructure, underfunded, and we talked briefly about the failure of public policy to provide a rudder or a direction in terms of where we need to go. Is that sort of an accurate recap? Which is incredibly promising, by the way, and optimistic, but nevertheless, it's the truth.
Good to end the season with a note of optimism, Will. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, no, look, we have a few more minutes with Jerry. We'll get there. This is just
this is the context. Exactly.
Well, the problem, and I get the public policy. If you put yourself in a governor's seat or a legislature seat or whatever, there's no, hey, I can raise the graduation rate at the high schools and I'm a hero, right?
Right.
The only good option for them, if you want to be just brass knuckles about it, is to run the other way because it's a
no one gets elected or reelected based on a water policy or water strategy, right?
Well, they can get unelected because of
yes,
that.
That's true.
And that's it's just there are no easy answers, and it's a lot of hard work, and that's true of many things, but I don't know of another area that I deal with that's like this. And just to give you a crazy thing, I have a beauty salon in the mall that I own. And I own a glamping business that I'm starting. And I've got some .com and AI things I'm working on. And all of those businesses, there are, I think, 5 key variables. And when you look at water, the 5 have 5 on top of 5, and it's very unwieldy. And we're very lucky that people like you are talking about it and getting it out there so that people, we've been so fat and happy in this country. Just turn on the shower in the morning. I think about it. My mother told me a story. My parents were old. I was a whoops child, which I didn't realize till college. But anyway, my roommates highlighted me on that. But my mother, for the first 2 years of when she was married to my father in the 40s, my father would carry 2 buckets of water out of the creek running by their home to her every morning. And she had to use 1 bucket for cooking and 1 bucket for cleaning and bathing my sister, James's mother. And that was their water supply for a couple of years before they had running water. They had 2 buckets of water.
Wow.
So, and I was 5 years old before my mother would go to the store and get salt, sugar, and flour. And that was about it. We had a milk cow, we had hogs, we had a garden, we had an orchard. If we had any trash once a month, we'd burn it. We didn't have nearly the disposable. So I guess I'm getting off the beaten track. We've just so abundant in this country. Would turn on the water, no problem. Turn on the tap. It's just so expected. We've certainly forgotten how valuable and amazing it is just to have running water. And people don't even want to think about the day when they turn the tap and there's nothing there. They just don't.
Right. Or have to pay more for it. I mean,
exactly.
Perish the thought,
Oh, it's I think the great irony is I think I read Las Vegas does one of the few things you'd want to copy from Las Vegas, but they apparently do a pretty good job of water conservation.
They do. They really, really do. And I know what's going on in Vegas quite well, not because I visit there a lot and I don't have a gambling problem, but
I lived there for a while, so.
Oh, okay. But I do work in Las Vegas for a client, and they actually have a water strategy, and they focus on conservation and reuse. And you brought up something a while ago, which is education and awareness. So how do you get civil society and other stakeholders to understand that gallon of water is precious and is becoming more precious, and we need to do more with less or do without. So it's an interesting story to be told out there.
We had the Southern Nevada Water Authority to sort of kickstart the season, which was a fantastic episode. But I love what you said, Jerry, that you're a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and compared to running beauty salons and AI startup, a glamping business, actually water trumps all of them in terms of how complicated and political it is, right? But presumably, I mean, you have other contacts in other sort of parts of the Colorado, and are they, because it sounds as if you are prepared for the day when your sources are dry, you have the industrial truck, but how, presumably not every other rancher has that means for when that day happens.
It's
right?
an interesting question, because in studying, growing up as a rancher and writing about them and publishing magazines about them and doing association work with them, drought, I've seen ranchers withstand family fights. I've seen them withstand low prices. I've seen them withstand litigation, all sorts of things. Drought is the one thing that will take a very tough rancher down. And
Wow.
they will, and I know of, I am probably thinking that I know of 3 pretty old ranching families, at least in this area. And when I say area, a couple 100-mile radius, that have over the years liquidated and gone to the Sandhills in Nebraska or something like that. That's just not so drought risky. So, or just liquidated their ranches because it's drought. Ranchers care deeply about the land they're on. They also care deeply about their animals. And a rancher will liquidate everything before he'll watch a cow thirst to death. So they'll just get out completely. And it is a backbreaker. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes forward. The ranching community, the people that are left are fairly tough, but this is certainly an issue that could change the landscape of ranching. It is changing the landscape of ranching.
So Jerry, what does the ranching community, ag sector at large need from a public policy perspective? I mean, what would be helpful? Certainty, reducing some level of risk? Is it technology, investment?
Well, I think I hate to do this to you, but all of the above.
No, we're good with all of the above.
Yeah, like you said, you called it a wicked problem.
Wicked problem.
Wicked problem.
Water's a wicked problem.
A wicked problem. It's somebody always says, "Oh, it's liquid gold." I'm like, I don't need liquid gold. I need water. So it's more. Liquid gold doesn't do crap for me. So
okay, Jerry, that is very quotable.
We have our soundbite for the episode. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it is and somewhat unique. I mean, I can't. I'm sure there are other basins around the planet like this, but I'd be hard pressed. I would be kind of surprised to find one quite as in a precarious situation as we find ourselves in right now. And with as we talked about it, how many people in LA do you think you could stop on the street and ask them where their water came from? And that would tell you 99% the tap. So, or Fiji or wherever the heck they get it. But yeah, there's a little no awareness. There is a little bit in my community area here, which is about 150, 200,000 people in the area. There is, because agriculture is still a part of a fairly balanced economic system here. But you go to places like Arizona, and that's, again, we talked about Las Vegas. Maybe they do the best job there. And because I know when I lived there, you got a water bill. And if you used a lot of water, you got a big bill. So
yeah,
it's good economic incentive there.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to grow, if they want to have economic development that's sustainable and resilient, then you need a water strategy, and it can't be voluntary. It has to be clear, as opposed, and it goes back to your comments about, every politician wants to stay away from the topic because it's easier to ask people to conserve. And when they don't, you just, throw up your arms and say, well, I tried. but that's not getting it done. I
No.
mean, certainly in the American West, it's failed.
Yeah, and it's hard to see, with St. George actually discussing the possibility of pulling their water right out of the Colorado. Wow, that would be, it's like, whoa, we need a forum to say, that's not going to happen. But they have the water right. So how do you deal with that from a private, okay, somebody's going to have to come up with some money to pay them for that, or figure out some kind of trading mechanism. I don't know. But
Right.
it's interesting. I don't want to, I know we're probably going long on time. I worked with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for a while, on cattle futures and things like that. And I worked with a guy who'd set up the hedging strategy for PepsiCo and Pizza Hut and all this and that. And he had been tasked by the Mercantile Exchange to come up with a hedging a market for hay. And it couldn't do it because it's not uniform enough. And you think, what, really? Feeder cattle aren't really that uniform, but they are, because you could say, 40,000 pound feeder cattle contract that can be traded. Water is, you would think maybe and I know Enron tried to do this and failed, but coming up with some sort of water market is really hard for the reasons I mentioned. You bring up Enron. When I was in technology publishing, they tried to do a contract. They wanted to trade broadband. And if you read much about Enron, they tried to get in positions to screw other people is what they really tried to do. But I was like, I don't know how you're going to trade broadband. Comcast owns Comcast broadband. They're not going to trade it with you. It's not going to happen. They couldn't get that through their heads. But anyway, with water, it would be interesting to come up with some sort of marketplace where I hate to say it, the government comes in and says, okay, St. George, you can't put this water line in, but the value of that is X, and we're going to pay you for that, or something, some kind of mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, water markets, tradable allocations, that's where we need to go. We just need flexibility in the marketplace, so that gallon can move around as needed, and that's just such a slog to make that happen. But I know a number of people are at the fringe of that, trying to make it, trying to build the platform.
It would, because what is, one of my fellow ranchers, the River Basin, did a conservation program this year. I was part of it, and I think it was pretty successful. Not a lot of ranchers did it, but it moved forward. In negotiating, the government or the basin went to my friend and said, well, we're going to pay you X for this water. And he said, no, you're going to pay me this. And they said, well, no. And he said, what part of I have it and you want it don't you understand? And finally, the government acquiesced and I actually paid him pretty close to what he was asking for.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful negotiation position, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a simple equation too. You got to love it.
It is very simple. Going back to Las Vegas, there's an old story. I've only been in this position a few times, but there's an old story about a small t-shirt shop guy on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and one of the streets. And one of the mega casinos was trying to buy him out. And they 5-10 million. He's 25 million. And they paid him. I tell that story on occasion when I get in that position, and my negotiating friend will say, what's the point of that story? I said, I'm the t-shirt shop. It's what it's worth. And if you don't want to pay it, that's fine. Well, they have to pay it. So, a marketplace would ease those kinds of tensions. I mean,
right.
So it's going to be a wildly interesting decade for this basin. It certainly is.
We agree. We've had several conversations as part of our mini series, and it's been really interesting, really insightful, and making it very personal, through the stories and, people, actually on the ground trying to deal with all the pain, the moving parts. So been helpful. Hopefully people sort of get it a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of the series was to bring these different voices of the key stakeholders involved, right? Whether it was Southern Nevada, yourself as a rancher, through to an entrepreneur. It's not one person that's going to solve the water crisis, right? But I think it's also, I'd like to know more about your play in AI, Jerry. That was
Well,
I think
I
a
would-
rancher, like a businessman involved in publishing, like what are you getting involved in? Because you mentioned in a pre-call around, the ability, you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So I'm suddenly thinking, what the hell are you doing in AI? I'd love to
I
AI,
want to hear about glamping.
Yeah. And the beauty salon,
well,
this is a whole other spin-off episode, right? But
well, AI, it's interesting. You probably watch Peter Zion, right? The
right.
demographer that tells us all that China's going to implode. But anyway, he brought it up that it's interesting. I talked to my fellow agri nerds and agribusiness people, and they come to an interesting conclusion, and that is that the internet did not change agriculture. Which is, people are like, what? The internet changed retail, it changed publishing, it didn't really change agriculture. Yeah, I mean, information flows and management's a little bit better, but its effect on AI, on the other hand, I think might boost agriculture, our production in the United States 10x.
Wow.
And there are drones right now that are, and it's going to reduce chemical usage, water usage, productivity infinitely. So I have a friend who started his own online flood insurance company. I met him, not having anything to do with agriculture, though he loves to come out and get on a horse and play cowboy once in a while. But he started this flood insurance company online. He just launched in like a couple months studyguide.ai or homeworkanswers.ai, because he was having trouble with his boys. He's not a programmer. I asked him, I go, what language are you using to program this web page in? He said, English. I'm using AI, has done the whole thing for me. And he's literally from his coffee table launched this company. So when I look at various inefficiencies, so for example, ranch appraisers are, I don't know, it's 6 months out and very expensive, and a lot of people are getting out of the business. So how can AI come in and supplement that? Instead of me paying $10,000 for a ranch to get appraised, paying somebody $49.95 and having it done in 10 seconds versus 6 months. So there's some real applications in AI. I think in water management, there's some real applications. It's just moving. I mean, the challenge with, here I am using ditches that were dug 150 years ago, and AI is moving like light speed, right? Like, I was one of the first guys in agriculture to put my magazine up online, beeftoday.com, in like 1995. And I got the internet and I saw it coming, and I didn't profit from it, by the way. But
You weren't the only publisher, Jerry, unfortunately. Yeah, the shift from print to online, it put a lot of magazines out of business.
Oh, it did. And they still, to this day, I have a lot of friends in publishing. I'm like, you guys, the internet's been around for a while. You still don't get it, really. I mean, but AI is a bit different from the internet in that it's moving 1,000 times faster, and I think it's going to have a lot more implication. I think AI is going to be a useful tool for water management. I know that there are 2 or 3 startups I know right now trying to use AI on animal and blockchain on animal identification and traceability and genetics. Yeah. So I'll toot beef's horn a little bit. We produce twice the beef with half the cattle that we did in 1950. And that is all genetics, not hormones or anything else, all genetics. Twice. I wean a 800 pound calf. My father weaned 400 pound calves, and we're doing it with less inputs. So I think AI has a real implication, well, on everything. I mean, I went and got my teeth cleaned at my dentist the other day, and I'm like, well, you're probably not touching. What, are you kidding me? He said, AI, I've either got to use these AI tools, or I'm going to be out of business in a couple of years. Dentistry. So
I
it's
thought for a moment you were going to say you went to get your teeth cleaned and your dentist was a robot powered by AI. But that's maybe
Well,
the you know, in
yeah.
a few years to come. But do you think when it comes to, I've seen some interesting cases on sort of AI and ag with satellite-based data, giving more information on yields on crop, and actually you're talking thousands of acres of land to sort of get that information very quickly in the hands of people to make decisions. There's a lot of cases for it there as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, what it allows farmers to do, instead of saying, okay, I got 400 acres, I'm going to go spray Roundup on the whole thing or some chemical. What AI allows them to do is take and there's machines are starting to exist in the California, San Fernando Valley that go out and identify specific weeds and spray the weed, not the plant.
Right.
And identify the plant, say it's, I don't know, tomatoes, corn, whatever, and through infrared technology, that needs a squirt of fertilizer or maybe a little extra water or not any water. So taking fields to the plant is what AI is going to allow it to do. And it's the agricultural output implications are, I think, massive. I mean, for beef industry, I think there's some marginal improvement, marginal compared to, I think in cropping, it's going to be huge. And in deer and case and certainly I think the agricultural chemical companies have to be concerned that their sales are going to go from 1 billion to 50 million. They need to be concerned about that, because I just don't, I'm not going to buy what I don't need.
Right.
And that's going to really, you know, we'll see agricultural outputs here in this country go bananas. And there's really, from an agricultural standpoint, few countries in the world even come close to competing with us. They don't have the soils in Africa. The Europeans are stuck in the 1800s. Argentina has economic issues. Brazil has economic issues. Really, American agriculture is and its adaptation to technology is pretty wild. And I stand amazed at a lot of my fellow agricultural producers and how advanced they are. I mean, I've got a friend in Missouri who is he's got a PhD in animal genetics, and he runs a little cow ranch, and is not that little, I shouldn't say that, but you know, the advancement. I mean, I have a friend right now as we speak, the World Dairy Expo is going on in Madison, Wisconsin, and the production,
of course,
of course, you're not there, but what's your problem? But they had dairy farmers from all over the world, and the advances they've made on dairy cows is unreal. I mean, I was a publisher of Dairy Today magazine 25 years ago. Their production's double per cow than it used to be. So
I think, I mean, you mentioned, you know, if you're, because of the data from the AI, you're arguably going to order the right amount of nutrients, of fertilizer, of chemicals that you need, so less is wastage. There's less wasted. I mean, it might have a financial impact on that chemical company, but arguably that's good for ranchers, for farmers, for the industry as a whole, right? So I'm just trying to, I know, Will, we teed off with a bit of context and a bit of pessimism. So I'm trying to, just for the very end.
Look, this is very positive. You know, it's about, you know, resilience and technology adoption and, you know, learning best practices. So I actually feel good about the ag sector. And, you know,
it's what's what's good for the ag chemical companies is not necessarily good for the farmers. My phone start ringing there, but yeah, I mean, the overuse of inputs, if you have the right AI tools, could be as high as 80-90%, and it's better for the consumer too. So
yeah, so this is a whole, you know, we talk about this a lot, you know, what does innovation look like in water and ag? And so these are the opportunities. This is going to be the, you know, trajectory in terms of outcomes, you know, less resources, lower operating costs.
Right.
You know, greater resiliency and, you know, improved productivity. So I think that's pretty damn positive, Jerry.
Yeah, I think it is. I have a friend in the oil and gas business who were having lunch, and he's like, "We can't feed the world." I'm like, I think we can actually. I mean, 40% of our corn crop goes down our gas tanks, and a lot of people don't. Iowa has more.
Yeah.
Iowa has more corn than Southern Hemisphere. Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota have more corn than Iowa. Illinois and Ohio have more corn than Iowa. I mean, we have a massive infrastructure of agriculture that, with AI, it could be a problem of abundance, but that's a problem we'd rather have, right, than the other. So I guess unless
Yeah, and an abundance of crop and food and resources is a nice problem to have, right? But Jerry, thanks so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Loved hearing your viewpoint, and I personally feel if agriculture is left within the hands of people like you, we are in safe hands, because you're clearly thinking ahead. You've got this entrepreneurial view, and I feel like we should do another episode purely on AI and ag.
It would be interesting.
As a follow-up.
We could probably put you in touch with some pretty advanced people that would really blow your mind.
Yeah, why don't we do that? And I'll be a little selfish. I want to hear about glamping the next time.
Oh, sure. Well, consider yourselves invited.
You have a deal.
I mean, the stream, produced glamping in the middle of
Well, it's the ranch it's going to go on is the same altitude as Aspen, Colorado, and it's beautiful area. And I'm going to keep grazing cattle there as part of the experience. But to get back to government, it's taken me 3.5 years to get permits to construct and operate it. So it's there's your government going on there. But anyway, it's part of the mission of the glamping is obviously to diversify the revenue stream for the ranch, but it's also to introduce people a little bit to agriculture.
right.
And we're going to have cattle drives as part of the experience. And
you have to see Tom in a cowboy hat. So we'll be there.
I need to upgrade my existing hat. But Jerry, when you have an opening date or the launch for the glam, I'd love to bring the family along. Yeah, one of my daughters rides a horse, so yeah, what a good excuse to come over.
There you go.
Jerry, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you guys.
Good luck with the continued developments, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Jerry.
Cheers, Jerry.
Bye-bye.
Really appreciate it. Hey,
Thank you.
be well.